Right, so look, greetings, hello everyone. Welcome to the Philosophy Club this week here in Batet. And, it's the Sunday, the 17th of March, which is actually St. Patrick's Day, in fact, the Irish saint. So we love St. Patrick. I'm part Irish myself, I've been there many times, and run the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for Britain and Ireland. So, let's hope that the peace between Britain and Ireland and Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland can endure the horrors of Brexit, and we can, re-establish proper relations between the UK and the rest of Europe, including Ireland. That's my hope, and I believe it would be St. Patrick's hope as well. He came and studied here in France as a Christian, possibly in the island of Lerins, which is off the south coast of France. He was a learned man, and also a druid of sorts, and from Scotland, in fact, near where I used to live in Argyll. He was from a place near Dumbarton, which I have been to many, many times on the Clyde, where he was captured by pirates and taken off to Ireland, and then went back to kind of educate them. So a great man, really, Patrick. So we honour his memory today, along with all the other saints and sages, which are in my dictionary of saints and sages, which I sometimes use here in the Philosophy Club. I won't do it today, but I'm republishing the third edition of this mammoth work, which includes saints from each of the faith traditions each day of the year. So today you look up, it would be Patrick, plus other Christians, it's not just one. And yes, the third edition is twice as big. It's actually over 1,000 pages of text, which is just, one volume has been published today and the other one will be published tomorrow, so available on my website, this universal calendar of saints and sages. Because each day there's a Buddhist, there's a Hindu, there's someone from the Jewish faith, from Islam, from Eastern religions, Taoism, Shintoism, and so on. And then there's a column for Freemasons, because they have their own lineage of intellectuals particularly, and there's a column for women, because often women don't get enough into the other columns. I experienced when I was researching for it. So I've given women, sages and saints, broadly interpreted. Why saints? Because they're sacred, holy people, and although they're not officially necessarily recognised in all religions, in Christianity and the Catholic Church there's a system for recognising a saint. You have to go through certain tests, and it's only when you're dead. So, who knows, the church might declare me a saint when I'm dead. I'd have to have done miracles from beyond the grave. It's not impossible, I'll do my best. But in things like Taoism and Shintoism and Buddhism, there isn't an official saint thing, although people are recognised as holy people. But there are sages, and again, it's not an official thing. You don't get a piece of paper saying you're a sage. You get it by recognition, by people realising that what you're teaching is of that quality. So I've gone through all the different faiths, and I've selected, to some extent, a subjective selection, who are the most saintly and wise of all the Taoists, or all the Confucianists, or all the Baha'is, or all the Shintoists, and so on. I had great fun compiling it, and anyway, enjoy. I hope you find a copy of it. Now I want to look at the next thing on our agenda. I want to just summarise my week, what I've been up to, and what trouble have I been causing to whom, because I like to cause what's called good trouble. So this week has been an interesting week. I've been to the monthly meeting of the Wisdom Keepers, run by my friend Satchen Raja. Thank you, Satchen, who's a great sage in his own right, actually, living in Canada. We're a bunch of 30 or 40 people that meet online every month. Not everyone comes to each meeting, and we discuss the state of the world and what we can do about it. War, conflict. During the COVID thing, we talked about that. we were discussing trauma, what it is that causes trauma for people, and how we can help heal from trauma. And if you think about what's going on in Gaza and Ukraine and elsewhere, there's tremendous traumas being generated at the moment on the planet, unnecessarily. Traumatized people often then go and cause trauma to other people. It's like a negative, chain reaction. And the Israeli people were pretty traumatized by the Holocaust, to put it mildly, and they created Israel afterwards, and many of them were traumatized, and then in turn they've been traumatizing the Palestinians. How can we break this cycle? How can we cut through that? That's what we were discussing, among other aspects. I've also been part of a panel that met this week on Friday, which was the launch of the independent panel for monitoring India's elections. India's general election is coming up, and I've been honoured to be invited as a neutral, independent academic who knows India, and I've been many times. I have many friends in India, and I care passionately about India's democracy. It's the biggest democracy on the planet, and they have this huge general election coming up. But there are signs that all is not well with Indian democracy. The Prime Minister Modi has been quite authoritarian of late, having opposition leaders arrested on false charges and imprisoned and excluded from Parliament, bringing false charges against MPs to silence them, having people investigated by the tax authorities, for instance, on bogus charges, in order to frighten them and make them compliant. Also organising through his RSS, which is a Hindu fascist organisation set up in the 1920s, which promoted a sort of Hitlerite vision of India and Hinduism, a sort of racial purity, Aryan type, we're all Hindus and the other people don't count. So these people, RSS, have been organising mob attacks on Christian Indians and on Islamic Indians, of which there are hundreds of millions, honourable part of India's multicultural landscape. But no, the RSS thinks they're all demonic and should be frightened with physical force, so organising mob attacks against them. And Modi just sits there and lets it all happen, never speaks out against it, and actually came to power on that sort of wavelength of hatred. So, and where the commission gets involved is because these people are being excluded from electoral rolls. So if you're not, being a good toady to Modi, you find you don't have a voting certificate. So the mass media is also very much controlled from the authoritarian centre of Indian politics, and dissident voices are not really heard. And this is a matter of concern to me as a Democrat. A healthy democracy depends on like an intelligent conversation between equals who have different views, respect each other, and don't use physical force to impose their views. Otherwise, it slips into a sort of fascist state, like a Nazi type state. And I've been very disturbed, actually, that in India, Hitler has been brought back as a sort of hero. The RSS have a very anti-British streak to their thinking. And so, because Hitler opposed the British, therefore Hitler must be a good guy. And, I'm afraid I disagree entirely with that. The reason for India's democracy is actually the British bequeathed a parliamentary system to them when we left, and it's one of the good things we did for India. And the Sikhs have also been demonised by Modi's government. And the RSS try and claim them, well, they're Hindus anyway, so, we won't beat them up too much. But Modi apparently has been sending off assassination squads to kill Sikhs in Canada, as claimed by Prime Minister Trudeau, with evidence. So, so these are all concerns. And then to top it all, there's the electronic voting machines that India's using for this massive election. 1 billion people going in India and counting. So they're using electronic voting machines, EVMs they're called, which the Electoral Commission of India claim are unhackable and robust, technology. But colleagues of mine who know about these things say no, they are hackable. And in fact, they've seen ways to do it. And, there are ways to break in and alter the codes and stuff. I suspend judgment. I don't know the truth of this, but I think there's something to answer here. And so the panel that I'm on is calling for a robust inquiry into these machines in the run-up to the election so that we can be absolutely 100% sure they're not being tampered with. Now, I've discovered, I've been very interested in the political economy of who makes the machines. It's a company called Bharat Electronics, which is a wing of the Indian Defence Forces. So we're talking military intelligence are engineering these machines. Now, Modi controls the entire armed forces in India, and they're all signed up for his vision of India without opposition, really, just, like a sort of armed military state. It's not impossible, therefore, that if you wanted to tamper with the results of the election to make absolutely sure Modi wins, you might do that because you're an honourable general in the army or an air marshal or something, and you order the minions to do that because it's on grounds of national security. Because, hey, India's got to be controlled by the Hindus. Just imagine if there was a Muslim prime minister or something. It'd be shocking. So no, on grounds of national security, we're going to impose Modiism on the nation for its own good. Sort of paternalistic, sort of Hindu fascism. Well, that is a matter of great concern, and that's not playing fair according to the rules of democracy. You shouldn't tamper with the results and pre-program them so they come out the way you want. The people should have a real voice. And that's the point of liberal democracy, which is what I do believe, that of all systems, democracy is the best of, the options. But it depends on an educated and intelligent citizenship, as Thomas Jefferson said when he bequeathed, the kind of electoral system they've got in the States. He said, look, this is only going to work if the citizens are intelligent and the education system is good. The trouble at the moment in the States, they're facing the problem of Trumpism because he's appealing to the least educated and not necessarily the least intellectually educated, although mainly, but also the least morally educated. The kind of Trump followers have a brutalistic view of affairs based on his own rather brutal character. So it's not a problem just in India, and we made this point at the panel. We've got elections coming up in Britain, and there are concerns there because plutocrats can buy elections nowadays. They're spending millions on Facebook ads saying, vote Conservative, don't let scary Labour in. They're socialists, we don't want them, sort of fear tactics, bought by massive amounts of money going into Facebook, which can also come from foreign governments and foreign security services. As we know, Brexit was bought in that way. Anyway, these are all very interesting issues I've been grappling with this week. And also took part in an African Peace Studies seminar again, run from Tanzania. And then on Monday, we had the Commonwealth Day, which was, a group of Commonwealth faith people from different countries discussing what spirituality can do to help bring the Commonwealth into cohesion and harmony. I run this as a Canadian British dual citizen. I love the Commonwealth. 56 nations. Recently, Mauritania has joined, which is a North African Islamic state. They feel they want to join this club called the Commonwealth. So let's welcome our Mauritanian brothers and sisters. And I'm hoping to run another meeting during the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, which will be in the autumn, taking place in Samoa, which is a Commonwealth country, a little island. And I'll be doing another online thing. So if any faith leaders or people interested in the role of faith in the community want to take part, please contact me. And we'll be doing that at the time of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. The Commonwealth Interfaith Network, we have no political power, we have no political role. We're just a gathering of good-hearted people that want to see all the faiths collaborating together for peace and for, stopping climate change and dealing with the problems of racism and mass movements of people through violence and conflict and, calming the planet down, really. I think the planet's got really overheated. It's not just global warming on the outer front. It's global warming on the inner front. People are just too excited. And we need to calm everyone down and have a cup of tea, so to speak. So that's a glimpse into my week. I've also been busy with the Delphic Games. And then the last thing I want to say is I've been attending this weekend. We've had the Liberal Democrats annual conference in York. And I've been a member of the Liberal Democrat Party for a long time. It's a small party in Britain. It's the inheritor of the Liberal Party, which used to be very important, particularly in Victorian days, which had the greatest Prime Minister Britain ever had, I think Gladstone, who bequeathed his library to the nation. I've run a conference there at St Daniel's Library in North Wales, in the wake of 9/11, the tragedy of 2001, 9/11. We had a conference on the educational implications of 9/11 at St Daniel's Library, and it's like I could see the ghost of Gladstone sitting in the big leather chair and stuff. He believed in ethical foreign policy. He believed, yes, Britain has an empire, yeah, okay, so now we have to run it ethically. And he felt very badly about Ireland, Britain's first sort of imperial conquest, that no, Ireland should get, freedom of religion and equal rights, votes, and so on. So Gladstone was a real campaigner for equality for the Irish, and it was thanks to the Liberal Party under Gladstone that we got things like pensions in Britain and unemployment rights and votes for women. All came in because of that liberal tradition, which went back to the 1830s, 1820s. In the wake of the French Revolution, the Liberals on the whole supported the French ideals of liberty, equality and fraternity. Whereas the Conservative Party were utterly opposed to them. They believed in a Britain based on servitude, literally slavery. They'd supported the slave trade for centuries. And inequality, the rich should rule the country, that's it, inequality. And actually they, as opposed to fraternity, Tories kind of like people to suffer a bit because it makes them fearful, docile, easily manipulated. So authoritarian regimes, Putin, Modi, Trumpism, and the Tory party, they like people to suffer because those frightened people won't dare say anything in opposition, which is why Putin likes to kill off his opposition from time to time, like Navalny. Well, the Liberal Party stood against all that and said, no, this is not acceptable. We want a modern democratic state. And in the 1830s, the Liberals brought in votes. They had a great Reform Act in 1832, which totally transformed British politics. And they founded my university, the University of London, for instance, which was a liberal project set up by Jeremy Bentham, one of the liberal intellectuals behind that time. So this, they were the inheritors of the Enlightenment tradition in British intellectual life and politics. And of course they get a very bad press. We get a very bad press from the Tory right wing, who are just run by plutocrats who don't care about democracy. They think they can fiddle the elections and get the results they want, and just by spending money. So it's crunch time because this election is coming up this year. The Prime Minister hasn't called the date yet. And this conference, therefore, for 3 days that I attended online, was quite important. There's a very good speech by the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey, who's a moderate, intelligent, progressive thinker. The Liberals also believe in the European project. We want Britain to be at the heart of Europe, to rejoin eventually the European Union once we've won that case and put it to the people in the second referendum. Because we think it's ridiculous that we should be outside of Europe. They're our nearest neighbouring partners, friends, families, people who've settled, travelled. We are Europeans. And so Jeremy Bentham was made an honorary French citizen, actually, as was my mother, because she was always coming to France, bringing school kids and, that's why I have a big French flag here, which was a gift to her from the mayor of Dieppe. So anyway, that's the other thing I've been doing this week. Trying my best to see, democracy and the values of fraternity, equality, and liberty prevail in our dangerous and difficult world. Okay, so do feel free to send me an email and tell me what you're up to, because this is a work for philosophy in the round. I brought with me a dictionary of liberal biography, which includes not just Gladstone but lots of others. Many famous women, Violet Bonham Carter, and the Liberal Party was also joined by something called the Social Democratic Party, which was like a more social democratic, Labour type, egalitarian and democratic party that merged with the Liberals to form the Liberal Democratic Party. And so we have also that social democratic tradition. One of our MPs, Layla Moran, is a Palestinian from a Palestinian Christian family whose family is suffering from the bombardments in Gaza. And Ed Davey has been to Palestine and Israel recently. He spoke to a conference about that, trying to, what we are calling for is an immediate ceasefire, massive aid to go in to help these people that are literally starving to death. Biden is finally saying he's going to build some jetties off the Palestinian coast. But it should have been done ages ago. Israel should not be allowed to get away with this. And Netanyahu, who is, I think, a real psycho case, is now saying he's going to go and attack Rafah, the last little stronghold, where over 1 million people are sheltering. What's he going to do, bomb the tents? The guy's mad. This is cruelty and genocide. Chris Hedges has been doing some very important interviews with Ilan Pappé, who is the moderate voice of Israeli society, the conscience of Israel, if you want, as a historian. He's professor at the University of Exeter. And he's written a book called The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, documenting what was done in 1948. Factually, he's an Israeli, right? And he's gone into all the documents. He knows what was done deliberately to force Palestinians to flee, to ethnically cleanse the villages. And so what Ilan Pappé is saying is that Israel is now split into two camps. There's the tribe of Judah, who really have taken over the Likud party, who are pretty fanatical, pretty hardcore, right-wing, no truck with any Palestinian rights, no possibility of a Palestinian state. It's our right to rule this land, given by God, and the Bible says that, and there's no arguing with that, and we'll kill anyone that gets in our way. Then there's the tribe of Israel, says Ilan Pappé, who are more intelligent, more intellectual, came from Eastern Europe, escaping the Holocaust, had a more liberal view of what Judaism is about. Many of them aren't even Jewish by religion. They're secular. They're highly trained, educated, savants, great thinkers like Gershom Scholem and Einstein was another of that tribe, the tribe of Israel, which are people who are ethnically Jewish, needed a homeland, were terrified of what the Holocaust had done to them, but didn't want to brutalize and kill their brethren, wanted to live in peace. Martin Buber is another member of that tribe, which is the real Israel, actually. It is the state of Israel, it's not the state of Judah. And Ilan Pappé's very correct analysis is that this sect, because it is a sect, it's a religious fanatical sect, has hijacked the state of Israel and waged war in the name of its version of God, which is not shared by most Israelis and certainly not shared by most intelligent, educated people around the world. This kind of brutalistic God that's going to smite the enemy is I think, a bit passé here in Europe and should be in the Middle East. It's causing enormous trouble. Anyway, worth watching the interview between Ilan Pappé and Chris Hedges, Professor Ilan Pappé. It's very, very interesting. But will Netanyahu listen? No, because he's in a little bubble of self-righteousness. And he's surrounded by right-wing religious fanatics that believe they're doing the will of God, their perception of what God is. Well, I'm on the side of Spinoza's God and Einstein's God, who was the God of philosophy. And don't forget, Spinoza was chucked out of the synagogue in Amsterdam as a heretic because he didn't believe in that kind of warmongering, revengeful, hateful God. Well, nor do I. And I don't believe Christ did either. And I don't believe that the vast majority of Jewish thinkers and intellectuals have believed in that God for centuries. It's, you know, it's like the reverse side of Hitlerism. Hitler was a fanatic, you know, like in the mirror of that ideology. Because anti-Gentilism is as strong within that tribe as anti-Semitism is. And the two are mirror images of each other. You know, the sheer hatred of the Jewish tribe for, you know, the Hellenistic values that were on offer in the humanist tradition. If you read Josephus and the history of the Jewish war, I mean, both sides were very, very fanatical. It was the most horrendous war, that. And that's really what's going on, Ilan Pappé is saying. There's a kind of civil war going on in Judaism and in the State of Israel. So, anyway, thoughts. How to heal it? That's my question as a philosopher. How can we heal this conflict before it, like, you know, causes more damage? Already 33,000 poor Palestinian, mostly women and children, have died as a result of this wrongful image of God, in my view. And you know, how can we heal that? That's the question as theologians and experts, and philosophers. So let's turn to the periodic table. Maybe we can get guidance from the periodic table and see how we can heal this. That's the point as a scientific tool, to be the Mendeleev of all these religions. How can we look at them objectively, get them all talking to each other? I'd much rather run a philosophy club in Gaza and invite Israelis and Jews and Muslims and Palestinians and everyone to come and sit around the table. Please stop the fighting, have a ceasefire, and I promise I will go and run a philosophy club from Gaza if I'm invited. Okay, so look, you go first. Choose your box for this week.
Yes, I have one box with one question.
Okay, go for it.
So the box is a philosophy pre-Socratics.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
I'm thinking about Heraclitus. And I'm thinking about one sentence of Heraclitus. Like life is a fight.
Life is a fight.
Yes. I don't know the quote exactly, but it's the...
It's something of that equivalent in French.
Yes.
La vie c'est un combat.
Oui. So that's why I was very surprised, because it's life is not peaceful. There is maybe somewhere peace, but like Arjuna in the...
Sure, in the Bhagavad Gita. You have to accept the fact.
Upon the peace, maybe there is fight. So I think there is something to dig in. I would like to know your point of view about this.
Okay, and I'll look at the pre-Socratics in that context then. Let me just go and get something before I choose my box.
Maybe if you have the book of Heraclitus, I think it's the fragment 110.
Okay, I'll look him up later. Interesting. Yeah, he's upstairs in the philosophy library. I won't go and get him now. Right, let's see what I'm going to juxtapose against that. Let's have this box here. Oh, right, so I've got Hinduism, Shiva. Which is kind of interesting juxtaposition. Yes. Well, let's look at the pre-Socratics first. which is box 59 in the philosophy part of the table. And it's a term used by historians of philosophy to mean, obviously, philosophers that were around before Socrates. But it's quite broad as to how far back you put that in time. I myself would want to put it back to include even as far back as Orpheus, who I think there's a claim that Orpheus was one of the first philosophers of ancient Greek culture. And one might want to say that Homer is exhibiting certain philosophical principles and Hesiod in Greek literature. I would certainly include Pythagoras in this as well. And we know that Pythagoras was a kind of Orphic follower of the Orphic teachings. The Muses were central to this lineage of thought. And Homer and Hesiod always invoked the Muses, and they were goddesses of the ancient Greeks, going back to the ancient Bronze Age and before. So prehistoric mainland Greece, which had various peoples coming and settling there, different tribes, the Dorians, the Achaeans and so on, and the Mycenaeans around Mycenae, who also went to Crete, and a lot of Greek mythology came from Crete. So Zeus is born in Crete, so is Hera. And there were philosophers, people of wisdom, let's call them sages, like in my book, the Universal Calendar of Saints and Sages. So these ancient Bronze Age Mediterranean people had their own lineage, but what happened to change it was that they were all oral traditions. These people didn't have writing going back, like the Druids didn't to begin with. And in fact, there's a very strong link between the ancient Greek Mediterranean peoples and the Druids, who were up in the northern part of what's called Thrace, where Orpheus came from. Was there fighting and so on? Yes, of course. They were warlike people, the Greeks. They were always battling. It is part of human nature. And the invention of bronze and then iron vastly increased the kind of brutality of war. But I believe that the philosophers stood against this normally. Orpheus and Pythagoras are definitely on the peace wing of the classical sage testimony against violence. And Pythagoras was someone teaching the way to inner peace. So I think, but Socrates fought, he was in the army. All able-bodied Athenians had to rally to the defense of the state. And so philosophers weren't absolute pacifists, but they were trying to find an inner peace. And Heraclitus was interesting. He was off in the Asia Minor at Miletus, which is an ancient city which I visited, and Ephesus. And he was associated with the temple in Ephesus, which was dedicated to Artemis. And apparently he left a book of sayings which he dedicated at the altar of the temple of Artemis, but that's been lost to history. We just have these fragments, which are very paradoxical and show a kind of Enlightenment consciousness. I thought the quote you were going to say is his saying, "The way up and the way down are the same." Now that only makes sense from the standpoint of Enlightenment, because if you look at things from a big enough perspective, the way up and the way down are the same. They're just relative to each other.